The first and my absolute favorite feature of the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is its ability to use it as a webcam. I was not expecting to love this feature so much, but by simply plugging this camera into your computer with a USB Type-C cable, you can stream or record to your computer in 1080p up to 60 FPS. You can also enable some of the advanced features like active tracking, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and even select the DJI Mic 2 as your audio source when you're streaming. This is such a neat feature and not something I thought I would love so much when we purchased the Pocket 3. Now, in this video, we have 49 more features to highlight about this camera, but first, my name is Craig Pruitt with Think Media. If you like these kinds of videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel because we actually upload every single week talking about the best tools, strategies, and tech to build your online influence with video. Our second tip, and one of the first things you should do if you buy the Pocket 3, is to download the DJI Mimo app. This is kind of the companion app that unlocks some additional functionality like monitoring the video signal from your cell phone device and also recording internally to the app, and has all other kinds of features. So be sure to download the Mimo app. Some other things you might not know about your camera when you first pull it out on the box is the status LED on the front of the Osmo. If that light is set to green, this means that the camera is ready to use and you can record or take photos. If that light is off, it means you're actively taking a photo or the camera is not ready to use, like perhaps there's no SD card inside of the camera, so you couldn't record or take a photo. If the light is blinking red, this means you are recording a video actively, and if it blinks red 3 times really quickly, this means the Pocket 3 is about to die or is powering off. Now, if you do decide to purchase the Creator Combo Pack, it will come with a DJI Mic 2, and a cool thing about the case that comes with the Pocket 3 is that there actually is a little slot up top to store the DJI Mic 2. A lot of people don't know this. That's a great location to keep your DJI Mic 2 so you always have the camera and the microphone paired together. Now, this tip is one of the most common frustrations that I see with users, which is they don't know why sometimes when they use the joystick and they push the joystick up or down, it zooms sometimes, and then sometimes it tilts up or down. And they can't figure out why this is. Well, there's a little button on the back of the screen right here on the very right side. And when you click this button, it changes the joystick functionality from tilting up or down to the zoom functionality. So sometimes you just accidentally click this button and then it'll enter zoom mode versus tilt mode, and you want one or the other. So just click that button, and if you do see a numerical value right there, that means that your camera is in tilt mode right now, and then you can use that button on the screen to zoom in and out. Now, if you just tap that button one more time, the numerical value will go away, which means it's shifted that functionality to the joystick function. So now the joystick is what's creating that zoom in and out function. I know a lot of people struggle to figure out why their Pocket 3 was doing that, and it's actually a really simple fix. Now, there's some really cool audio functionality with the Pocket 3, starting with my favorite audio feature, which is you can use any sort of USB-C audio interface with the Pocket 3. This is including but not limited to USB shotgun microphones and even audio interfaces. So one of my favorite ways to use this is to plug in my Rodecaster Pro via the USB-C output on the back of the Rodecaster and plug that directly into the Pocket 3. And now I'm able to use high quality podcast microphones as my audio source with my Pocket 3. This works with all sorts of USB-C microphones, or you can even purchase some adapters like this 3.5 to USB-C adapter to plug in more traditional 3.5mm microphone devices. Now, we already mentioned the DJI Mic 2 system, and this is such a high quality microphone that seamlessly pairs with the built-in audio receiver that the Pocket 3 has. So these pair together super easily and conveniently, and if you do purchase the combo pack, you will get a DJI Mic 2 system, which I think is a great audio solution for this camera. So even though this camera can receive USB audio interfaces and wireless audio signals from the DJI Mic 2, the physical microphones that are built into this camera are actually really good as well. This camera comes with 3 internal microphones, 2 on the sides and 1 on the rear, and this creates an omnidirectional audio recording experience. And honestly, this is one of the best internal microphones that I've ever heard on a camera system. The audio is totally usable right out of the box just by using the internal microphones. Now, let's say you're recording a file and you're using the DJI Mic 2 as your main audio source, and you're sending that audio signal to the Pocket 3. But what if you also want to record a backup audio source by leveraging the internal microphone on the Pocket 3? Well, I have good news. You can actually do this, and it's a really cool feature. So if you swipe down from the menu and dive into your settings, look for the built-in mic audio backup and turn this on. And what this is going to do is save a backup audio file to the SD card in case anything happens to your DJI Mic 2 audio. And it's also just a really cool way to get 2 different audio sources, especially if you have subjects that are further away from each other and you want to record audio from from 2 different locations. So I mentioned that the Pocket 3 records an omnidirectional audio signal, which means it's trying to record audio from every direction. But there are instances in which you might not want to do that, especially if you have a noisy environment in front of you and you're just wanting to record your own audio behind the camera. So you can actually enable directional audio. And if you want to do this, you can go into your settings. So swipe in from the right side of the screen and then press the microphone settings. And then you can change your audio direction from all and change it to either front or front and back. So this is going to give you a little bit more of a directional audio sound and be a little bit more specialized to the person you're trying to record audio from. Now let's talk about a few settings to get better color exposure and style out of your Pocket 3. The first being we want to enable Pro mode, which is going to give us more access to some advanced features for getting better color out of the camera. So all you need to do is swipe in from the right side of the screen and click the Pro button there at the top, and that will enable Pro mode. And now you have a lot more access to better settings options. Now, most of the time, I actually keep the camera set to auto exposure because this camera does a really good job at exposing properly. But I've noticed that in some circumstances, it actually slightly overexposes the image when I'd prefer it to be a little bit darker. And what you can do here is keep it on auto exposure, but dial in what's called exposure compensation to compensate for the fact that this camera often overexposes just a little bit. So all you have to do is swipe in from the right side of the menu, click your exposure button right there, and leave it set to auto. But on this left side of the frame, we can dial in our EV, which is exposure compensation value, and we can bring that down to -0.3 or even -0.7. I usually keep it at -0.3 when I'm shooting in auto exposure, and this tends to give me the best result. Now, our next tip is sometimes you do want to shoot in manual exposure if you want the maximum control over your image. So just swipe in from the right again. Now, instead of selecting auto, we'll go in and hit the M button for manual exposure, and this gives us manual control over our shutter speed and our ISO. You typically want your shutter speed to be double whatever frame rate you're shooting in. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second, you would set your shutter speed to 1/60, and then you can adjust your ISO value to give you correct exposure. If it's still too bright, you can add an ND filter to the front of the camera lens, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Now, if you want even more control over your image, there are some super weird glamour effects that you can use by leveraging the DJI Mimo app. So if you just swipe in from the right side of the screen, you can turn on glamour effects, and whatever effects you have turned on in the DJI Mimo app will apply to your footage. A lot of these effects are pretty weird, like soft skin effect, and there's even one that like slims down your face and your nose to make you look a little bit skinnier. I think these are kind of weird effects, but some people might actually find them helpful. But just know that if you do want to use these glamour effects, you have to use the DJI Mimo app on a mobile device. You can't just use it on the Pocket 3 itself. Now, if you ever find yourself in a low light situation, there actually is a dedicated low light mode that this camera shoots in. All you have to do is click the bottom left icon on the screen and then scroll over to low light mode. And now you've just enabled low light mode. Now, with this setting, there are a few limitations with the resolutions and frame rates you can shoot in. You can shoot in 4K at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, and the same is true for 1080p, 24, 25, and 30 FPS. And honestly, for how small this camera's sensor is, the low light performance is actually pretty good. Now, if you do decide you want to shoot in the D-Log-M profile, which is the log format that this camera is capable of shooting in, you'll be able to maximize the dynamic range of this camera for more intense lighting situations. If there's a big disparity in the brighter parts of the image versus the darker parts of the image, it might be helpful to shoot in this D-Log-M profile, but then you'll have to apply a color correction in post-production in order to get your image looking proper for the export. In order to turn on D-Log-M, you want to swipe in from the right side of the screen and go down to color and click that button a couple times until you see the D-Log-M color profile, and now your image will look super flat and sort of desaturated on the back of the camera. But thankfully, DJI has actually made this really easy to color grade with their DJI Pocket 3 D-Log-M to Rec 709 LUT that you can download from their website. This converts the log footage to a beautiful looking Rec 709 profile in a matter of seconds. So I highly encourage you to download this for when you shoot in your log profile, and we'll link it down in the description below. Now let's talk about a bunch of other key settings you'll want to get dialed in with your Pocket 3, starting with your resolution and frame rate. If you're on the home screen, just simply swipe up from the bottom of the screen, and that will reveal the resolution and frame rate options. You can shoot in 1080p, 2.7K, and 4K up to 60 frames per second. You can also change your aspect ratio from 16:9, which is usually the format that I shoot in. It's a standard widescreen format like the shot you're seeing right now. You can also change that to a 1:1 aspect ratio, but then that limits you to a 3K resolution max. Now let's say you just took a video file and you want to play back that image and see how it looked. This is very easy to do. All you have to do is swipe in from the left side of the screen, and that will automatically start playing back the last file that you recorded. You can then start swiping up or down to navigate through your recorded files, or you can click the icon in the top left part of the screen there to enable the grid view, and you can swipe through a side-by-side gallery view of all of the content that you've recorded. Now let's say you're on a hike or something and you constantly find yourself needing to power off the camera and then turn it back on to quickly record something, and it gets kind of cumbersome to have to manually turn on the camera each time and then hit record, and you'd like to be able to just turn on the camera and start recording automatically. Well, this is really cool that you can actually do this with this camera with the screen rotate and capture feature. All you need to do is swipe down from the home screen and click the top middle left button, which is the screen rotate and capture feature. And all you have to do is turn that on so that anytime the camera is off and you flip the screen, it will automatically turn the camera on and then immediately start recording a video file so you don't miss whatever action is happening in front of you. This is such a cool feature that I don't always keep on, but there are certain situations in which it is very helpful. So be sure to turn this on if it does help you out. Now, if you often find yourself recording moving subjects like animals or people or cars, etc., you're often going to want to use the active tracking feature to lock onto a subject and track them within the frame. This makes filming yourself especially so much easier, and the quickest way to access this feature is simply to double click a portion of the screen that you would like to track, and the camera will automatically start tracking that object. This function will work whether the camera is facing you in selfie mode or is facing away from you at a different subject. Now, if you are a vlogger or you often find yourself recording yourself and putting the camera in selfie mode, there's a great feature that tells the camera, anytime I put you in selfie mode, I want you to begin tracking my face, and you don't have to click the screen or anything like that. It just automatically does this. So swipe down from the top of the screen and click that top right button. This is called FT Selfie On. Just make sure that's checked on. Now, every time you enter selfie mode, the camera's going to automatically track your face without needing to double click the screen. Now, when it comes to this active track feature, I've noticed that sometimes it tracks your face in not the most optimal position. It tries to put you sort of in the exact middle of the frame, and sometimes you'd like to be a little bit more towards the top of the frame or even on the left or the right side of your frame. And there's actually a way that you can tell the Pocket 3 to track you in a specific portion of the frame. This is called dynamic framing. So if you just click this button on the left side of the frame, that's the Smart Gimbal Mode button, and you scroll down to select dynamic framing. If you hit the start button, this is going to open up a grid view where you're able to select the portion of the frame that you would like to track. Now, all you need to do is position your head in that portion of the frame and then click enter on the joystick. Now the Pocket 3 is going to track my head position in that portion of the frame rather than trying to keep it exactly in the middle, which often doesn't look the best. Now the Pocket 3 is not just a camera, but it's also a gimbal that can do a lot of really cool things. There are a few gimbal modes that we can choose from. First is follow mode, which allows access to the tilt and pan axes, which is great for vlogging or selfie style videos. The second mode would be the tilt lock, which locks the tilt axis but still allows the pan axis. So really this is best for keeping your horizon line level, which is great for performing different camera moves such as a push-in or a pull-out or a pan move. And the third mode is FPV mode, which allows the camera to move with all available axes. So this allows tilt, pan, and roll axes to be moved. So the camera is just kind of flowing freely here, which is great for getting some different kinds of creative shots. As a YouTuber, I almost always find myself leaving the gimbal in follow mode and then enabling some sort of active track feature to track a moving subject like myself or somebody else. Now we can also adjust the gimbal's rotational speed so that the gimbal isn't moving too fast or too slow depending on what look we're going for. So if we swipe down from the menu, we can click that little person icon right there, and there are three settings we can choose from. There's slow, which the gimbal will move nice and slow, default, which is a little bit faster, and fast is really fast, obviously for more action style shots. I've personally found that even the slow setting still moves pretty quickly, and I have always kept it in slow for all of my YouTube needs. If you are creating more action action-based content, you will want to increase your rotational speed to default or even fast. Sometimes though, you do want to lock your gimbal in place, and this is actually really easy to do. All you have to do is push in on the joystick and it's going to lock that gimbal in place and try to keep the gimbal perfectly forward. This is great for doing different kinds of camera moves without needing to go in and change any of your settings. Just click the joystick in and now the camera will do its best to stay perfectly level and in place. Now sometimes the gimbal can get in a kind of weird direction, or maybe it's a little bit off center or off level, and there's a really easy way to quickly reset the gimbal to make sure it's perfectly level. All you have to do is double click the joystick, and no matter what happens, the gimbal will reset to a perfectly level position. Now depending on the type of content that you're shooting, maybe you're a wedding filmmaker and you're leveraging the Pocket 3 as a wedding filmmaking device, then practically you will always be recording a subject in front of you. But if you're a vlogger, you would always be recording yourself. So you'd want the orientation of the camera to be facing you, of course. Well, there's a cool feature in here called the Gimbal Startup Direction. So if we go into our settings menu, there's a setting right there at the top that's called Gimbal Startup Direction. And you can select the gimbal to start up facing forward, backwards, or to the last setting that the camera was in when you turn the camera off. And I'd really encourage you to go in and select the direction that would be best for you, because it really is just going to save you a lot of time when it comes time to power on the camera and turn it off. It's kind of annoying to have to keep selecting which direction you want to face. You can just manually tell it what to do. Such a cool feature. Okay, another really cool setting with this camera is the fact that you can transfer files in two different methods. There is, of course, the micro SD card. This camera has a slot to input a micro SD card, and you could pop that out and then transfer that SD card to your computer to offload files. But if you don't want to do that, you can also leverage the USB-C port and plug that directly into your computer, and then your computer will recognize the Pocket 3 as a device, and you can offload files directly on your computer that way. So you don't have to take the micro SD card out, and most of the time I actually use the USB-C port. I think it might actually be a tiny bit slower than just popping out the micro SD card and then plugging that into the computer, so you can decide for yourself which one is best for you, but I love that you do have both options. Now, a cool thing about the Pocket 3 is that if the camera is off and you flip the screen open, it's automatically going to turn on because it thinks you're going to make some content, and this is a really cool feature. But there's also a feature that can enable the camera to automatically turn off when you rotate the screen as well. And this is called the Rotate Screen Power Off feature. So if you dive into your settings and go down to the Rotate Screen to power off, you can click that button and select either never, and that would mean no matter what happens, if I flip the screen while the camera is on, I do not want you to turn the camera off. You can select a setting that is after 2 seconds, it'll turn off and it'll give you a little countdown timer, and you have 2 seconds to select a no, I don't want you to turn off right now, or you can select it to immediately power off as soon as you rotate the screen. This is of course up to your individual preference, but it definitely can save you a lot of time if you decide to turn this on. If you're a creator who does a lot of product reviews like we do here at Think Media, you might want to enable what's called product showcase mode. So if you swipe in from the right side of the screen and then you go to your focus mode, you can turn on product showcase mode, which is going to blur the background a little bit and is going to prioritize foreground objects when you put them in front of your face rather than trying to maintain focus on your face. This is great for product reviews and often a feature that I turn on when I'm using the Pocket 3. If you're a creator who often shoots in different types of environments or likes to shoot different types of videos, you might find yourself changing settings pretty often, going from more high frame rate, slow motion settings to then 4K 24 for more cinematic look. Well, the good news is you can actually save preset settings for quick access to these regular settings that you use most often. All you have to do is swipe down from the screen and then click that top left preset button, and then you can save whatever current camera settings you have set as a preset and then access those at a later time to recall the same exact camera settings. On the Pocket 3, you also have access to custom file and folder name settings to just customize whatever you want to name your files. So if you go into your settings menu, go to naming management, and then you can rename your folder and file name to whatever name you would like, which can really help if you're shooting different types of projects for yourself, or even if you're working with clients. Sometimes they like to have a certain file naming structure, and you can apply that here in your settings. There are a couple different video codecs that you can record in, and this is actually pretty important. So you want to dive into your settings, go to video compression, and there's two different choices here. You can use the efficiency HEVC, which is an H.265 codec, which is a little bit more compressed, so it's going to be great for saving file space. But on some older computers or more budget-friendly computers, a lot of times it's going to be hard for those computers to handle that more compressed codec. So if that is the type of machine that you're working on, you might want to choose the compatibility setting, which is an H.264 codec, which most machines can handle pretty well, and it still looks really good. So you have two options here. You just got to choose whichever one might be the best fit for you. If you do want to set a custom white balance, you can swipe in from the right side of the screen and select that WB feature there, and it's currently set to auto white balance, but you can manually set your white balance depending on what scene you're in, especially if you're in a studio environment like I am right here, and the exposure and the lighting and the white balance wouldn't really need to change. It could be really helpful to manually set your white balance to 5600 Kelvin, which is the color temperature of my light right here. So leverage that if you're in a more controlled lighting situation. Now, a lot of people don't know that this camera can take really good photos. All you have to do is click the bottom left icon there and then swipe over to photo mode. And now you can start taking high quality images by just using the record button on the back of the screen. That will take a photo. If you want to select your file format, you can choose from JPEG or JPEG plus RAW. Just swipe in from the right side of the screen and then select your file format. You do want to make sure that you're in photo mode, obviously, in order to change this setting. I highly recommend you shoot in the JPEG plus RAW setting so you have access to those RAW files if you indeed want to edit your images in something like Adobe Lightroom. A cool feature with this camera is you can actually take long exposure photos, which is really cool. You just want to make sure you're in photo mode and then swipe in from the right side of the screen and change your exposure to manual exposure. And now what we need to do is slow down our shutter speed so we can take a long exposure. I'd highly recommend you slow down your shutter speed to at least a half a second or slower, and then you can adjust your ISO accordingly to get correct exposure. If your image still is a little bit too bright, you can add an ND filter to the front of your camera lens to get correct exposure, and we'll talk about those ND filters in just a minute. This camera does have a couple of different aspect ratios that it can shoot in for photos. So if you swipe up from the bottom of the home screen, this will open up the different aspect ratios. You can shoot in 16:9, which is a standard widescreen format, or you can shoot in a 1:1 aspect ratio, which is actually the full size of this sensor, which will allow you to capture the most information, but it is a little bit of a weird aspect ratio, so you're probably going to need to resize that image in post-production later. Also right here in the same menu, you can enable a countdown timer, so just again, swipe up from the screen, and then you can select either a 3, 5, or 7-second timer, which is great for taking group selfies or even doing some long exposures and not touching the camera when you begin that long exposure. It's really good to set a timer in those situations, so you can enable the timer here on the Pocket 3. Now there's also a panorama mode with the Pocket 3. All you have to do is select the bottom icon in the left corner of the home screen and then swipe over to the panorama feature, and then you'll want to make sure the Pocket 3 is stationed on a stable platform and then just leave it alone. And then in order to start taking a panoramic photo, you just need to click that record button one time, which acts as the shutter release, and then it will automatically start taking a series of photos that it will automatically stitch together, and now you have a panoramic photo in a matter of seconds. Now, if you do buy the Pocket 3 Creator Combo, you will get the DJI Mic 2 system, and there's a few things you'd want to know about it, starting with what all of these little blinking LED lights even mean. So now if you have your DJI Mic 2 on and it is a solid blue light, this means it's connected to the Pocket 3 and there's a secure connection. If the light is blinking slowly blue, this means it's ready to link, but it's not linked quite yet. If it's blinking quickly blue, it means pairing mode is enabled and it's trying to pair to the Pocket 3. If the light is solid yellow, it means noise canceling has been enabled and it's also linked to the Pocket 3 right now. And if the light is blinking yellow, it means noise canceling is on, but the mic is not connected to the Pocket 3 at the moment. And then the LED indicator on the other side, if it's turned off and nothing's happening, it just means there's no audio being recorded to the internal memory of the DJI Mic 2. And if that mic is on and solid red, it does mean we are recording internally to the Mic 2 system. Okay, and speaking of noise cancellation, if you do want to turn this feature on, it's really easy. All you have to do is short press the power button one time and the LED indicator will switch from blue to yellow, and you'll feel a little vibration when this happens, and that means you have just enabled noise cancellation. Now, if you would like to make sure that every single time you are recording a video file on the Pocket 3, you're also recording a backup audio file to the DJI Mic 2, there's actually a really great feature that makes this very easy called audio to video sync. So if you go into your settings, click the wireless mic setting, and then turn on the audio to video sync feature, every time you hit record on the Pocket 3, it will automatically begin an audio recording on the Mic 2, so you have a built-in backup in case your wireless audio signal drops out for any reason. This is a really cool feature, and I always have this feature turned on if I am using the Mic 2. Now, with all of these blinking LED lights, sometimes they get kind of distracting, and there actually is a way you can turn these off. So dive into the settings, select the wireless mic, and then just turn the LED setting off. And this will just turn off some of those LED lights that are sometimes a little bit distracting if your mic is visible in the frame. The last setting we want to enable with the DJI Mic 2 is the 32-bit float audio setting. So dive into your settings, select wireless mic, and turn on 32-bit float. This is just going to give you the highest quality possible audio, and this records your audio file directly to the DJI Mic 2 system, and it just makes sure that your audio is never going to clip if you are recording in a little bit of a louder sound environment. So I'd highly encourage you to turn this on just as a safety precaution. Now there's a few more accessories we want to talk about, first being the Creator Combo Kit. I highly encourage you to purchase this kit if you are looking at the Pocket 3 system. It comes with some cool accessories like an extended battery pack, a little tripod stand, a cool carrying case and bag, and the DJI Mic 2. Overall, it's a huge value add for not a super substantial price increase, and I'd encourage you to pick it up. When you do this, you also get a wide angle lens edition that comes with the combo kit, which takes your lens from roughly a 20mm lens and widens it all the way out to about a 15mm focal length equivalent. This is great for vlogging and capturing a wider field of view. You can also separately purchase a black Pro Mist filter, which is a really cool filter that adds sort of a soft, misty-like effect to your image to soften up your skin tones and some of the lights that are in your scene. And overall, it just looks really pretty. So if you haven't ever tried this out, I'd encourage you to pick one up and give it a try. You'll also want to pick up some ND filters in order to get the correct shutter speed if you decide to shoot in manual exposure, especially if you're shooting outdoors in brighter environments. This is an essential addition to your kit. ND filters are sort of like sunglasses for your camera and usually are pretty essential if you do any sort of filmmaking outdoors. There's lots of different options, and we'll link this one right here down in the description below. The last accessory I'll mention is this DJI expansion adapter, which is a really cool adapter to allow you to fit a cold shoe onto your Pocket 3, as well as has an action camera port to attach to different types of accessories. Such a cool little accessory and only costs about $19. All right, those are a ton of tips and hidden features about the DJI Pocket 3. If you do want to see how the Pocket 3 stacks up against some of the best vlog cameras out there, you can click or tap the screen right here, and we'll see you in the next video.